Welcome to the Properties to Profit podcast. I'm Michael, your host. Excited to share with you my journey from a six-figure job to building a successful real estate business. Each episode will explore various aspects of real estate investing, from wholesaling and flipping to managing rentals. I'll share the lessons and insights I've gained, aiming to help you avoid mistakes and achieve your financial goals. Expect guest experts, valuable tips, and practical advice to guide you on your own real estate journey. Thank you for tuning in. If you find any value in this podcast, please subscribe, share, and follow me on social media. Let's turn properties into profits together. Good morning, guys. Today on Properties to Profits, I want to talk about a wholesale deal we just did here in Columbus, Ohio. This particular wholesale was in a nice neighborhood, Pickerington, Ohio. ARVs 300 to 400,000 for us. So should be a nice neighborhood. And so wanted to walk you guys through this story and share with you guys why wholesaling is so important and why being ethical and honest really helps you, and having a great sales process to shuffle out the condition of the house so you don't have to do renegotiations later, because it really causes stagnation in the process. And then no seller likes to drop their price, especially a seller in this condition. I'm going to switch up the seller's name. We're just going to call her Rose. She's a really sweet lady. That's why. And so Rose reached out to us roughly 5 months ago. It's now end of June when recording this. And she reached out to us via TV ads. I actually took the call. It was probably 5 a.m. And she was pretty distraught from the get-go. I could hear it in her voice. I could tell she sounded a little bit older, and you could tell she was super upset. I was like, hey, Rose, I sense that something's really wrong here. What's going on? How can I best help you? Am I the best person to help you? And I was really concerned from this lady at the get-go. I was on my way to the gyms when I took this call. And just having a conversation with her, I realized she was in a lot of trouble. Unfortunately, her husband had died a year ago, and they had been renting out a house that her and her husband had lived in together for a majority of their life, 40 years. She was in her late 60s. It was their first house they purchased and their only house they purchased together. And they had lived there for 40 years. I think she owned it 42 years total. And she had been renting it out for the last 12 to 18 months. And when her husband died, one, they never vetted the tenants before they put them in. And two, when her husband died, things just went from bad to worse, actually. They weren't paying regularly. I mean, market rent over there was $2,000, $2,200, somewhere like that. They were only paying $800, and that was Rose's and her husband's fault. They didn't know the market. They didn't know how to vet tenants, and the tenants never paid on time, and they always requested things to be fixed. And her husband had two incomes when her husband arrived, so they could make that happen. Well, unfortunately, he died, and Rose couldn't keep up with the repairs, and the tenants got pretty nasty with her and stopped paying her. And unfortunately, they had a sewer line back up in their house, and the tenants continued to use the bathroom there. I'm talking to the tune of Rose thought there was 2 feet. Once we had checked out the property, there was over 4 feet of sewage in the basement. It is nasty. Beware of the pics that will be coming. We will be showing you this. Be grateful that you cannot smell through YouTube yet. I'm guessing YouTube's working on that. And so we had told Rose was going to go to the bank, and she had told the bank that, hey, I don't want this house anymore. And the bank was like, hey, I'll do a deed in lieu of foreclosure, which means that Rose signs over her deed. She gets to walk away from the property. Sometimes it's clean, sometimes it's not, meaning that if there is a deficit, Rose could be liable for it and have to continue down that rabbit hole of getting even with the bank. And unfortunately, Rose didn't have the means necessary. The tenants had moved out at the end of the year, so the property's now been vacant for 6 months. And the tenants haven't paid. And man, let's just say they left this place in terrible condition. I'm talking feces in the house, roaches in the house, some major spider webs in this thing where roaches were entangled in them and spiders were eating the roaches, and then roaches were eating dead roaches. It was quite interesting. Dog feces, just dirty house in general. And we've got some videos on this thing, guys, that I will share with you. And so with that, we gave her a price and said, hey, Rose, great news. If you move forward with us, we think we can buy this house. You walk away with a little bit of money, but you don't have to do the deed in lieu of foreclosure. We can stop this hit on your credit. She'd only missed at this point two payments. Like I said, this was back in January. Well, Rose was like, okay, this sounds really good, Mike. You are a great guy, I'm sure, and no problem. Well, she went and told someone else, and they're like, hey, you need to call another company. Well, she'd gotten a letter from one of those companies in the mail, and that company in the mail proceeded to bash us because we were on TV. Well, they gave her a ridiculous price, 30 to 40 grand higher, and she could not keep up with that. They went into contract, of course, because why not? It's $40,000 more. What does she have to lose? And let me tell you, she has a lot to lose. We'll get into that, and I'm so disappointed with this other wholesaler. And they could not close this deal. They actually just ghosted her, and Rose, being the sweet lady that she is, thought they were going to come back around. They're like, oh, I'm going to give them another chance, give them another chance. Week after week, Rose was like, I'm going to give them another chance. 3 weeks in, Rose was like, I haven't heard from them 3 weeks. We were supposed to close 3 weeks ago. I was like, Rose, you just got to let it go. This guy's not coming back. Not everyone's as sweet as you are. I know that extra $40,000 would be astronomical to you and life-changing, and if we could do it, we would love to. There's not much money in this property. It was a bad property all around. And so Rose was like, oh, well, this other guy's at $200,000, I think it was. We're at like 175 and our payoff is 160. We're like, Rose, okay, if they're going to close, go for it. Well, it's the same song and dance. 2 weeks in, they haven't closed like they're supposed to. And man, I've done a lot of wholesale deals at this point. I've done over 100 flips and I've owned over 100 rentals at this point. And I'm realizing there aren't many people who are going to take on this much sewer damage. You can't walk down to the sewer and see what the real problem is. I mean, there's 4 feet of feces. I don't know anyone who's going to walk into that personally. Maybe you will. If you would, we have more of these properties to check out. I'm going to do one next week on a house in Asheville that we just took care of. So can't wait to show you guys that one. But anyway, another 3-4 weeks goes by and Rose just ghosts us. Well, every couple of weeks, I just shoot her text. Hey, Rose, thinking about you. Hope things are good. Haven't heard the house. So eventually, after 15, 17 text messages and probably another 40 calls, she calls me back and says, hey, I got a realtor who's going to list this thing for $225. I wanted to give you another shot. I was like, what price, Rose? She's like, well, after fees, all these things, I need to be at $210. I was like, Rose, unfortunately, I can't do that. And here in Columbus, Ohio, her house is in such terrible shape that I'm worried about this thing being listed and it being condemned. I mean, you guys look at the photos. What would you do if you were the listing agent or, a buyer's agent and you walk into this house? Not a lot of people are used to this, right? I'm like, who's the agent? Let me have a conversation with him. Call him up and he's like, well, it's not my duty to tell her what's best for her, all of these things. It will hopefully sell on the market. And I'm like, sir, she's 2 months behind on her mortgage. I think at this time she was 4 months behind on the mortgage. Aren't you worried about the foreclosure being filed, bank fees going up, all of these things? His response is, she's a grown adult. She can do what she wants. Well, long story short, she signs the brokerage agreement. They list it and it gets taken down right away because agents start complaining about how disgusting this house is. I'm like, oh, what do you know? Well, Rose, I keep following up with her. She's like, I just don't know what to do. I need more money. My payoff's gone up. I'm like, Rose, I've been trying to explain this to you since we met. This is 5 months ago now. So this is January. We're June now. She's like, well, I don't know. Call my attorney. I'm like, attorney, Rose, what's going on? She's like, I'm just tired of dealing with all these people who don't actually show up, and I want someone who's going to actually close. And I'm like, okay, you got an attorney. Who is it? How'd you meet him? Well, my insurance agent led me over. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a fun one. So we get this attorney involved. He sends over the paperwork. I'm like, fine, I don't want to argue it. It's attorney paperwork, right? I review it. And the funny thing is, if they go with our paperwork, we would pay all closing costs, right? That's a key factor. Well, the attorney says, oh, she'll cover the transfer tax. She'll cover her side of closing costs, 50%, and we'll cover our side. I'm like, okay, this attorney just cost Rose, who doesn't have the funds, $3,000, because I guarantee that's what he charged her, maybe more, because all of our emails going back and forth. And he he was going to cost her roughly, I mean, the transfer tax was almost $1,000, and then closing cost her another $1,000. So he cost her $2,000. So her hiring this attorney cost her roughly $2,000 on the sale of her house, not to mention an extra 2 weeks because he took time to draft up the documents, which tells me he doesn't do a lot of these. And then who knows what the bank payoff went up to. And then on top of that, his fees, which I'm guessing were $2,000 to $5,000. Well, after we got the paperwork, I went and got it signed. I was like, whatever, we'll get it signed. I think there was one thing he wanted to change. He wanted 10K EMD hard, and we hadn't been in the house for over 4 months. And we're like, hey, we'll do 10K EMD, but we want 48-hour inspection period. We just want to make sure that the sewage level hasn't seeped up to the first floor, because once it seeps up there, our repair costs are going up another 30, 40 grand, maybe more. And so he was like, yeah, that makes sense. Totally cool with that. So we went through it. All was good. We wired 10K EMD. No problems. And I just had the document signed, and he calls me, riffs me a new one. He's like, you signed documents without me knowing about it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what are you talking about? You drafted this thing up. I need to sign documents. People change documents all the time. I was like, hey, I recorded everything. Her neighbor was there. She was there. I read everything to her. She was perfectly okay with it. I'm so sorry. I just took initiative when I saw the documents, and she said she hadn't seen the documents. She said, hey, if he drafted, I was cool with him. I'll send them to you. Let me know if there's any issues. We're not someone who's going to go change legal documents that another attorney drafted up. He's like, I just don't want her to be taken advantage of. You're not to talk to her anymore. So we said, okay, we won't talk to her, whatever. We have found when attorneys do this, they don't know how important it is to communicate to these sellers. These sellers need everything, right? They need their hand held. They're in super tough situations. And if they weren't in this tough situation, they wouldn't be calling me. They would have had the sewer fixed. They would have listed on the market. They would have had all the feces taken out of this house, all the junk taken out of this house. They would have got the bugs cleaned up, the roaches cleaned up, but they didn't do that. If I wanted to start a maple tree farm, I would have just cleaned out this lady's gutters, and I would have had 300 maple tree saplings, and I could have planted those anywhere and sold these maple trees in the next 10 years and made thousands of dollars. That's how disarray this house is, guys. Seller or the attorney has no idea. He doesn't deal with these sellers, but whatever. We're going to let him do his thing, let his ego run. Well, 2 days in, we still have not heard from her. She hasn't coordinated to title, blah, blah, blah. Attorney's like, hey, I've called her. I'm like, hey, attorney, we deal with these quite a bit. I'm sure you do more than I do. But in these cases, we typically have to call them when they kind of ghost us on this. I mean, they're selling their family home. Like, this is her retirement. You can't imagine how important this is to her. And a lot of people in this industry do not understand that, guys. So what I had to really break down to this attorney was she needs her hand held. She's being a turtle right now. She's just tucking her head, hoping everything gets better. You and I both know things don't get better. So I said, hey, I understand, sir. You don't want to be taken advantage of. That's not who we are. We have 70 plus 5-star Google reviews. We've only been in this game at this point wholesaling for 2 years exactly today, like June 30th. This is crazy. This is when I closed my first wholesale deal in July 2 years ago. And I've been doing direct marketing for 3 years to these sellers, almost to the date, August 17th. 24 will be 3 years. And so I was like, hey, we got 70 plus 5-star reviews. I think that's pretty good. How many 5-star reviews do you have? He didn't have that many. He'd been an attorney a lot longer than I was like, hey, so I think that shows you, well, I mean, what kind of people and character we are. We're not here to take advantage of them. We're just here to help them get the deal across the finish line. And so that they can put this headache, this bad chapter behind them and move forward. And he goes, well, I'm sure that's you, but you got all communication through me. I was like, okay. Hey, we have a TC who really handles all this. Can we have her just reach out? I won't reach out. This is going to need some handholding. He's like, yeah, sure. I'll keep calling her, whatever. Well, after another 2 days, and I don't know how many calls from my TC and text messages, she finally reaches out, talk to my attorney. We're like, Rose, call your attorney. We need some stuff to get this payoff done so we can move forward. And we're like, great. Okay, cool. And so we move forward. And eventually things get done. But that extra 3 weeks, foreclosure was filed, which cost Rose several $1,000s. The bank had already processed the foreclosure, all those things, and that added to her payoff. And that's the urgency you got to put behind these things. And it's the urgency if you're a seller in a tough situation, you want to go with a company that you know is going to close. And here, my company, Oasis Home Buyers, is going to close if we give you a solid price. If you tell us everything that is wrong with the house and don't hide things from us, we are going to give you a price that we can for sure close on. And that is the surety we can have. You won't need the attorney, which cost Rose probably $6,000. And what you don't know is yet when we got to the closing table, her payoff was higher than what she had. And that didn't include her attorney fees or anything like that. Well, what we did is because, hey, we normally take on closing costs. And mind you, we're paying about 10 grand more than what we wanted to. So we were at 175 when we talked to her in January. Her payoff at that point was 160. Now her payoff was about 184, gone up $14,000, or I'm sorry, $24,000 in 6 months due to they had filed the foreclosure, taxes had come out, she was being charged on taxes and interest, and all of those things. And so we took care of the transfer tax. And we took care of all closing costs so that she didn't have to bring $2,000 to the table because she didn't have it, unfortunately. And this attorney didn't think about those things. They're not familiar with this. They don't deal with this on a daily basis. And so I want to encourage you when you are dealing with a direct to seller, hey, if they send you a mailer, great. Check out their Google reviews. Check out if they're on TV or radio. Those people I've found to be more reputable and are going to help you out of the tough situation. And they're going to be more concerned about your house more than the money. Okay. So I just want to share that story with you guys. Would love a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this house. Would you have bought this house with 4 feet of sewer? We bought it at 185. We actually wholesaled it to another flipper we knew. I believe he paid $210. He does a lot in Pickerington. And so we did make a $25K quick assignment on it and saved us the hassle having to deal with all this. He needed another project, so he was willing to pay for it. So guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Would you guys have bought a house with 4 feet of sewer, not knowing what the basement walls look like, not knowing what the actual problem is, not knowing what the mechanicals look like? We were assuming they had to be replaced, right? They're sitting in sewage. Would you have taken the time to reach out to the seller 300 times via text message and phone calls? And then another 5 or 6 emails? Would you have taken the time to educate the attorney who's supposed to be a professional on all this? Would you have dealt with all those issues? Most people wouldn't have, right? But to make it in this business, to do the deal flow that we did, June 30th, 2024, we're having our worst month ever. I think it's 12 deals, $200,000 in assignments, 194, I think it is. Not worst month ever. Worst month in over 12 months, let's say that. And but we're doing that work still, no matter what. We had site visits back in February and March on this house. 2 of my employees went out there, and they forgot about it. They didn't follow up with her as much as I did. Every now and then I'd be like, hey, text her, and they would. But I followed up with this lady 200 plus times for multiple different numbers. These sellers are in such distress, they want to clam up into their shells and just forget about this whole problem. Most of them aren't going to take the right action. And that's why you've got to build a brand, continue to reach out to them, and continue to market them. All right. Thanks for checking into Properties for Profit today. Wanted to teach you guys how we help this seller from start to finish in such a distressed situation. And I want you guys to continue to like and share. I appreciate all the feedback I've gotten so far. Follow me on Instagram, RealEstateMike02, for more videos and insights on real estate and business. Appreciate you guys and have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Properties for Profit podcast. I hope you found today's episode valuable. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and share it with others who might benefit. Follow me on social media for more updates and tips. Until next time, keep turning properties into profits.